In this module, we're going to talk about organizational information systems. Every organization has a form of an information system. Recall that IS are hardware, software, networking, data, people, and procedures. So essentially, as organizations continue to grow, as technology continues to advance, we need to often think about what type of information system is best used to further the strategic plan of our organization. So one of the first things that we need to talk about in organizational information systems is a system called a transactional processing system. Or TPS. So transactional processing systems, the goal and the job of this, the transactional processing system, is to capture, store, and monitor the data from all business transactions. Capture, store, and monitor the data from all business transactions. So you have to understand, though, a business transaction can take many different shapes. When you shop on Amazon and you make a purchase, that's a business transaction. When you park your car in a parking lot and you go to the meter and you put in your money for the particular spot that you're in, that's a business transaction. When you register for a class, that's a business transaction. If you click on a link from a web page, that could be a business transaction. So the whole point of a TPS is to capture all of those data, to store those data, and to give us the ability to retrieve as necessary. Now, there are some specific goals that a transactional processing system, that they have to be very functional and handle. So one of the things that we have to do, so a TPS has to handle large volumes of data. Large volumes of data. This, by the way, if you think about Amazon.com and the number of transactions that occur on an hourly or even a minute basis, their transactional processing system has to be able to ingest all of those transactions and then maintain the data. For example, another massive amount of data, when you think about some of these space telescopes, we have a space telescope now that we expect it to generate an exabyte of data per day. An exabyte of data. So not a gig, not a peta, it goes even farther. An exabyte of data, which ultimately they expect will be able to compress down to about 10 terabytes of data per day. Other organizations, when you think about, for example, the log files in many big organizations that are watching and monitoring any kind of network traffic, it's not unheard of to generate 1 million records of log files per day. And all of those data then are stored in the TPS. So handling large volumes of data is one of the key functions. Another is we want to avoid errors. So consider when you shop at Walmart or a grocery store, and when you take your product up to the check register and you scan your product that you're purchasing, you want to make sure that the scanned product that you're purchasing is indeed what you pay for. Right? So if you're going to buy a bunch of bananas, you don't want to be charged for a $100 wheel of cheese. So it's absolutely important for the transactional processing system to make sure that errors don't exist in the transaction or in the data. Think of this as a student. When you register for a class, you want to make sure that the classes that you register for are indeed those classes that you'll attend. And so the TPS needs to be able to monitor that and avoid errors. Another, handle large variations in volume. Handle large variations in volume. Now think about this for a second. When you register for class, you do that twice, maybe 3 times a year. So you'll register for your fall semester. You'll do that sometime in the late spring, at the end of your spring semester. You register for your spring semester at the end of your fall, and you'll also do sometimes you'll register for summer also toward the end or somewhere in your spring semester. So if you're at a university, let's say the university has 30,000 students. And what we see then, if we were to take let's just graph this out in terms of system usage. So we have time, and we'll do it by months, January, March, April. Right, so 12 months. And then we're going to have, let's say, the number of hits, registration hits. If we were to take 30,000 students and then say, okay, if we average out across the entire year the number of hits that the servers need to be able to handle, let's say that we average it out to about maybe, let's say it's 500 hits a day. And so we put our little 500 here, and it's an average. Right? So I know it looks like it's going down, but it's actually not. That's your imagination. So we've got 500 hits that happen per day. If what we did then, saying based on 500 hits a day, we need to basically plan to have enough servers in place to handle this type of network traffic. But you know that at 30,000 students, what we really see is sometime around March, April. So if this is actually our network traffic on those servers, sometime around March, April, we see a huge spike. And then once registration's over, we continue on. Maybe another spike here just before summer. And then we continue on again sometime around October, huge spike. And then continue. So perhaps if we took the area under all these curves and average them out, we come to about 500. But sometime up here, we're closer to, let's say, 20,000. So 20,000 hits up here. If you as a student, if we had only planned for an average of 500 hits per day, then in that very short period of time, we see a massive spike in access. The servers are not going to be able to handle that type of traffic. And so if you've ever called into customer service, and as you're speaking to customer service, they tell you you're 5th in the queue and your expected wait time is 2 minutes. Could you imagine if you've got 20,000 hits and you've only planned for 500 hits? You might be 15,000 in the queue and your expected wait time could be 2.5 months. Right? Would you be happy with that? No. Now you would say though, if I look at this and I plan for these points here, which is legitimate, then what you'll say is, well then, but for a very short period of time we're at this level and then the rest of the time we're under capacity. Well then the question is, from a business perspective, what's important? It actually, in our case, for registration, is better to be under capacity most of the year to make sure that we can handle those massive spikes in traffic during the time of registration. We need to be able to handle these large variations. The same thing goes with if you walk into a super Walmart, and many times you walk into a super Walmart and you look and there's just aisle upon aisle upon aisle upon aisle of unused cash registers. right? Maybe you've got a couple at each ends that are running, and most of the time you see just massive empty rows, and you say, well, what a waste of space and what a waste of money in investing in those aisles. However, there are some times in the year that all of a sudden every single aisle is being used, and Walmart has said, we are going to plan for those massive spikes. And even though we don't utilize those things most of the time, it's important for us to make sure that when those spikes come, Christmas time, or in our case, when the students come back, right, all of a sudden the stores are overrun with students buying all sorts of things. The stores want to make sure that they are ready to handle that level of variation. That's another thing that a TPS must handle. So, large volumes of data, avoid the errors, large variations in the data. Another one, don't lose or never lose, that's not spelled right, lose results. Never lose results. I have been actually shopping at Amazon for probably 13 years now. I can go back and I can actually look at every single transaction I have ever made with Amazon. Now you think, wow, how many customers does Amazon have? All of them have the ability to go back and view previous transactions. And one of the goals of the TPS is never to lose those data, never to lose those results. So that's another objective. And then lastly, we want to maintain privacy and security. Maintain privacy and security. So what we talk about in this case, if you're a student, for example, you have all sorts of data stored in our transaction processing system. And we actually are federally mandated to keep your information protected. And so we have to make sure that people don't have unauthorized access. Similarly, go back to the Amazon example. If you've been shopping at Amazon as long as I have, would you be okay if I were able to get access and look at all of your transactions? Nor would I want you to come in and get access and see my credit card number or any of those types of details. And so one of the goals of the TPS then also is to make sure that the data are protected. And so to maintain privacy and security.